Okay, so for our next session, we're welcoming back Andrew, and this time he's joined by Brendan Gallagher, who's the CEO of Bywater Solutions. They're going to give an update on the Koha Charitable Foundation and discuss the role it will have on the future of the Koha project. Over to you guys.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm Brendan, and everyone knows Andrew, and thank you very much for that lovely introduction with your ancestors. I thought that was a great riff, so well done on that. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the whole planning committee. This has been on rails. It's been great, and I think everyone's really impressed with how this is going so far. Also, I want to thank the Koha community for having us. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year. I love being with all of you, and I'm always just I come home so motivated, and I'm ready to tackle all those big things that we're talking about and doing. So thank you, and I really always appreciate that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Koha Foundation work that we've been doing.
And just before we do, I actually forgot to do this earlier. We're not putting up any beautiful pictures of New Zealand. We've done that already. But I'm going to do a little commercial. And this is for the wonderful Okarito sandfly repellent that I found when we were staying in Okarito. And I believe you me, if you go to the beach there with any kind of vain aspiration to see a penguin, then you need this stuff. So, you can get it online, and it's great, and it works. So with that, yeah, sorry, I hadn't bought it by then. So back to this. We've been working since Kohacon in Montreal, actually, as a task force on the work towards the Koha Charitable Foundation, and this is the group of wonderful people who volunteered to take on the work that we need to do, and have all been contributing to that work. And you can see from the names, many I'm sure will know pretty much all the names on there, that we are scattered across 21 time zones in that group, and that has brought challenges with it in terms of how much we've been able to tackle and achieve. And I've got a little extra asterisk, Paul Poulin there, who isn't an official member of the task force, but just to thank Paul alongside these other volunteers for some great work we did on the bylaws in Marseille when we had a session there. Brendan and Paul and I sat and did some work there, so thanks to Paul for that. So thank you to all those volunteers for all that work over the last 12 months. And we're going to talk about what we've been up to.
All right. So what we've been working on is we are going to formalize as the Koha Charitable Foundation. We are looking towards the OLF, which is the Open Library Foundation, for a foundation that holds that. We have a little bit more information about OLF on some next slides. And the vision that we came up as a group was to promote, protect, and enables the development of the Koha free and open source library system, and supports and facilitates the growth of a diverse and international community of Koha contributors and users. So this is pretty early on that we talked about this, and we wanted to set our goals for creating the bylaws that we were looking at. This is me again. Okay, why a foundation? Why not keep it how we've always had it now? So we're hoping that a foundation can help us with managing funding for long-term sustainability, that we can continue to move the project forward, and we can have like a centralized kind of governance that would help us promote Koha. We also wanted it to kind of house our community services. We have a website that someone is hosting and volunteering to pay by themselves. We also have Jenkins nodes. There's lots of these different kind of services that we provide to help with our deployment of Koha and our community. So we're hoping that we can house some of those there and maybe just pay for those, so that way the volunteers wouldn't have to be paying for the Jenkins nodes, and we can do this as a community. Another thing in here that I wanted to add was there is a Koha trademark. and that lives with the Horowhenua Library Trust 2016. And this is the house of the trademark, and we do not want to do anything with that. We want to continue to support that trust and make sure that we are establishing and making sure that that trust is viable so that it can hold the Koha trademark in our like honor kind of thing. Now, with this Horowhenua Library Trust 2016, there is paperwork that is needed to be filled out every year, and Joe does that. It's like an auditing report, financial report, and then what kind of like assets or deeds the foundation is holding. And currently, it is like a 5-member trust board from people around the world. And I'm going to pass it to Joe for some updates on that.
So we did absolutely nothing except 5 minutes once a year. I have to fill out a financial statement and a statement of our objectives of what we've done. And we do nothing. Our whole purpose of being is to hold that trademark so no one else can have it. We really struggle to fit the definition of a charitable purpose as well. And now we have to do, there's been changes in New Zealand law. So the trustees have all agreed now that we think we should stop being a charitable trust because there's no benefit. It'd just be a trust, which means we have a simple constitution. We don't have to do anything anyway except exist. And just move to 3 New Zealand-based trustees. So we'll be bringing that to the community at a later date to formalise that change. But we don't have money, we don't have a bank account. I pay bills, Chris pays bills. It doesn't matter.
Right. Thank you all for doing that, and I think it makes sense to have the trust members be in New Zealand. That's great.
So therefore, the Koha Charitable Foundation that will come into being will have a legal governance structure. And because of the decision to move or house the foundation, the Koha Charitable Foundation, under the Open Library Foundation, or within the Open Library Foundation, the structure that they provide for their associated foundation members is as something that's called a single member limited liability corporation, right? Yes. Yep. Which is but it's a charitable, an IR, what they called, an IRC3 or whatever they're called.
501c.
501c.
Yeah,
501,
that's a US term.
US term that I don't know. A 501c3.
It just means we can collect money without having to pay taxes on it.
Correct. The task force has worked on the sort of structure of the board that we would have and the membership of that board. And there's provision for 5 to 11 members. And there are specific roles within the board that legally need to be fulfilled, as well as common sense-wise need to be fulfilled. It's called a manager, but really think of that as a chair or a president or whatever you're most familiar with in your context. These names are the names required by the SMLLC structure. So a manager, a treasurer, and a secretary. There are within the bylaws that we've drawn up safeguards against any commercial dominance of that board. So whilst we are giving the ability for members of that board to be from organizations that profit in some way from Koha, they can never be in the majority, and they are prevented from being in all of the roles, I think. From memory, I don't have the bylaws written in my head, but yes. So there are provisions to protect against any commercial dominance in that board. So where are we with the bylaws? They've been in development by this group, and they have provisions in around transparency, around what we do with documents, what gets disclosed, and so on, and how much the rest of the community can access and see of the work of the board. And there is a concept of subgroups forming from that board, for example, to support the organisation of the annual Kohacon and pass on the knowledge that gets gained every year. So one of the things that I know the organising committee here will probably have benefited from, but will also want to do, is pass on information to the next organising committee for Kohacon26. Jonathan and I have just been throwing up some ideas about product development and product management, and we think that the foundation may have a role in a subgroup that focuses on some of those thoughts and ideas going forward.
And I do also want to point out that we already do have subgroups. Like we've got documentation groups, we've got developer groups that meet and everything like that. And so what we're hoping is just to give them a little bit of a framework and a place that we could, contribute and share everything in kind of like a governance way. But we already do have these committees. It's just kind of putting them under another umbrella. I'm
just going to actually go back to the first point, actually, because I think I don't think it comes up in the following slides, but one of the absolutely key things of instancing ourselves in this way is to facilitate a bank account for the community. And therefore, within the governance and within the bylaws, there's guidance rules around how that money can be gathered and used. And it's very important in terms of the maintenance of the charitable structure that there are protections against any of the board members taking part in decision-making that gives them a commercial advantage in any way. And that's really vital, actually, in protecting the charitable status, the 501c3 status of the organisation. So that's all part of the structure also.
All right, so some next steps. So the committee, the task force, has written bylaws, and we have released them out for comment, and we have received comments, but the task force has not had a chance as a group yet to review these comments and to make any adjustments to the bylaws before we would put it out for another round of comments and stuff. So Alicia and David, we're hoping to steal you from part of the work days, and let's go through the comments. We can get a head start on that. That'd be great. And so part of the task force, we're starting to wind down a little bit, and we wanted to put some discussion and momentum towards the actual first board nominations. How do we do it? How do we review it? What kind of voting mechanism? Those are all things that still need to be discussed on how to do that so it's fair. And then the last step would be filling out the paperwork. Once we have a board established, then the board can work on creating all the paperwork that we need done.
Yeah, and first ratify the bylaws. So the first job of the board would be to seat themselves and then ratify the bylaws and then move towards moving into the OLF.
Go ahead.
The opportunities we feel that this presents us, I've talked a little bit about the need for a bank account. Well, a bank account's no good if it's empty. So we need and we hope that this will enable the community to raise funds for things that it needs and things that it wants to fund or things that it might want to fund. It's an ability to save for the future. Obviously, it does formalize some elements of the community governance and keeps that up to date with what's required internationally and legally. It provides further opportunity for partnerships and we hope also that it's going to support the community's efforts to innovate and to continue to develop this project.
So with the funding, I'm hoping that we can have a fundraising subcommittee that can go after grants. There are big like search grants and other types of grants out there that we actually, it's difficult for a for-profit company to be able to apply for these grants. If we apply as a foundation, I think we've got a much better chance of getting some of that and applying it to the project. How to get involved? Go ahead.
Yep. So none of this can be achieved on an individual's own, or even just with the task force. And we have seen, as happens, and as is natural, and I myself have been part of this. The members of the task force can't always give of their time consistently and all the time, and we've seen some turnover in the task force over the year that we've been in play. We're not suggesting at this point that there's any point in refreshing the task force in any way, because we're kind of nearly at the point where we've done the work. So we'll just finish what we've got done so far and get it done among those that are still working actively on that task force. But there will definitely, obviously, be the opportunity to join the board and nominate folk to join the board, and obviously participate in the process of seating and choosing people, voting, getting the right people in. There will be still a further opportunity to comment on the bylaws before we push them to the board to ratify. Obviously, in general, there's always the opportunity to get involved with this community via the various gatherings that we have, the Kohacon annually, the various hackfests that exist, and of course, the local, and there are many of them, Koha user groups globally. And clearly, donating is always a good way to help, or volunteering in whatever way and capacity that you can as a member of this great community.